Hello, Abigail here with the Tarotscopes for Taurus season, Capricorn Sun, Moon, and Rising. Capricorn humans, we are officially in Taurus season, and I am happy to report that there's a little bit of a chill down that's happening in Taurus season. We're not quite as activated, the astrology is not as intense. I do believe that we are processing a lot of what happened previously, so there are still, issues and conflicts coming up, but we're not quite as forced into these really intense situations as much as it was earlier. Um, if there are some things to wrap up in from the retrogrades, that's going to happen in the earlier part of Taurus season. If there are things that you didn't get to accomplish during the retrogrades that you needed to accomplish, those will continue to come up until they are resolved. Um, but there is a sense of movement and flow that we didn't quite get to experience at the beginning of the year. Part of that's because we're finishing out the zodiacal I have dyslexia, the zodiacal year, um, and also partially just because of how the energy was. We entered the new year with a Mars retrograde that dovetailed straight into a Venus retrograde that had a Mercury retrograde in the middle of it, and then eclipse season. So, Taurus season should be a little more chill. It does seem like there's a lot of opportunities. There is also this energy of a lot of endings happening. As this energy kind of winds up, we will also be continuing to release stuff. I think this is also triggered by the new moon in Taurus that has a lovely T square to Mars and Pluto, very intense. Um, and then I think that release we're going to get to experience on that full moon in Scorpio, which I think is really beautiful. I'm excited for the new moon in Scorpio, the full moon in Scorpio. I think it's going to be, even though the moon is words in detriment, it is this nice, moment where I find that detriment moons are really good at shifting things and getting to the source of stuff. Unlike, um, pardon my dog's choking in the background. Reggie, okay, baby? Reggie. He has a collapsed trachea. Poor baby. Anyways, so even though the moon's in detriment, it feels as though it's really going to help us get to the source of our pain and frustration, and in the very least, bring things to the surface that need to be fleshed out. If not, a nice, soothing release. Um, I made a video on the astrology of Taurus season. You can check that out if you want, but that's just kind of where we are at. Um, this is your fellow Earth sign, so there is a flow of energy here. We do start off with some pretty progressive cards and then some things to wrap up, but we'll get into that in a minute. Your Oracle card is Enchanted Unity. Let animals be your guide. I do like this a lot for you. I think the spring is a good time for you to reconnect with certain parts of yourself. I think touching base with your guides, connecting with animals, connecting with nature, finding help and support as a Saturn heavy person is really important. A lot of Saturn people I know try to go it alone, but you do better not in groups per se, but in systems of support because Saturn is about systems. So don't try to go it alone. If you don't have the people, you have the spirits. Connect with them. Some people are more animal spirit based than others, so find that out. Do some investigating, connect with animals. A great place to start is like going through kind of your history with animals, childhood pets, adjacent pets, how you connect with nature, and really coming in and finding some space to explore that part of your spirituality, especially with this card. I also love, we have this hand wrapped around a broom and a book. This is about study and research and um, moving beyond the parameters of what is visible and seen and into more unseen themes. So I do think Taurus season is going to be deeply magical for you. I think especially because we start off with this magician. I love how earthy this magician is. So there's so much, I think, in Taurus season for you. So many resources and new ideas. And I like the magician because it's this idea of like the idea and the tools coming together. The fool is the thought. The fool is the like, we should do this thing. And the magician, as the one card, is the we should do this thing, and here are the tools we can do that with. And then coming together and creating that kind of a story. And I think it's beautiful too that the next card then is the high priestess, which is like we have the thing and we have the thought, but now we have to consider like the unknown and the unseen and energy as a next step. So with this magician, it is time to start getting things picked up and moving. I don't think you need to complete anything technically. Anything that's going to be completed is going to be kind of universe driven, but it is time to start and to reconsider and to move your passions and dreams forward in a way that you feel makes you feel good about yourself. And something that a lot of these readings are kind of swirling around is kind of a coming back to self after all of the chaos, coming back to innate desire, coming back to your needs. A lot of us have kind of had to put our needs aside for a little bit in order to kind of brave the survival of the earliest part of this year. And now is the time to kind of get back into a creative space where we're not just surviving, we're not just in a desperation mode, kind of reacting to our environment. We're starting to kind of backpedal and be able to choose our responses to the things that we do. 1 second. Reggie, come here. Sorry about that. Yelling at my dog. He knows better. And he is a Pisces sun, Pisces rising, Aries moon, with an Aquarius Venus, my spicy baby, who wants all the things all the time and likes to bark at our neighbors, even though he knows he's not allowed. All right. Anyways, back on track after I yelled at my dog. He didn't even come into the room. He's just like, whatever, mom. Then we have the King of Cups. This really reminds me that Mars has been in Cancer. That is your oppositional sign. There were a lot of lessons about your capacity and depth and how feelings affect you even when you don't agree with them or maybe don't want to participate with them, and kind of honoring and respecting your own boundaries and limitations, especially when they are emotional. I find a lot of Saturn ruled signs tend to push past. Well, I shouldn't say that. I find Capricorns, I'll just put this here. I find Capricorn people tend to value maybe more material things above the emotional thing. And this is obviously unique to your chart, so if you don't feel this way, that's fine. To the point that they exhaust themselves. Reading is so chaotic. To the point that they exhaust themselves. Sorry, I had a notification. To the point that they exhaust themselves on the emotional front. They're like, well, I'm doing all these things physically, and I've said no on a physical plane, but I don't have boundaries when it comes to my emotional body. And I'm out here trying to meet other people's physical needs at the expense of my emotional needs. And so I'm failing, but I'm not failing because I'm not good at things. I'm failing because I don't have endless, limitless resources. And I think the Mars retrograde really taught a lot of people with Cancer placements or really strong Cancer Capricorn aspects and axis and like heavy on the axis, like you have a stellium in Capricorn or Cancer, about that capacity and about the fact that like you have to take care of yourself first. And it doesn't mean that you're an island or a rock, but it means that like the source of abundance that you give has parameters and rules, and people have to respect that. And they can't always expect stuff from you. And it starts with you communicating that. So I think in Taurus season, this is a continued story of you allowing your emotions to be your guide, allowing your feelings to instruct you and to help you make better Saturnian choices, especially with, the final days of Aries in Pisces. Obviously, it will retrograde back later this year. I think it goes back into Pisces on September 1st. With that, I do really think that Saturn in Pisces was a lot about how to put boundaries on things that we can't see, like feelings and emotions and people's energetic access to us versus their physical access. I feel that Saturn in Aquarius was very much like the physical access people have to you. Something that I, for better or for worse, use is physical distance from people. I do way better if there's someone who has harmed me, if I get physical distance and can create that boundary. People with Saturn and Pisces, they do better with energetic protections. And I don't do as good with energetic protections as someone who's really good at physical protection. So what I'm trying to say is, for my Capricorn people who are in that kind of Cancer Pisces channel there, you need to set boundaries on the wealth of your emotional side. And that's what the King of Cups is here for. So in Taurus season, if someone is constantly pulling on your emotional resources, be like, hey, I don't have as much as you need. Here are some resources. I'm happy to meet you in this way, but this is my limit and this is my boundary. And I want to be able to participate, but I also need space. A lot of my Saturn folks need space to take care of themselves, and often they value it and are some of the most called upon people when it comes to other people's energetic desires. So don't forget to activate the King of Cups this Taurus season. Hang out with people who fill you up, and who you fill up versus the people who are needy. And those people can exist. Um, I, as an earth sign heavy person, have a lot of people who only ever seek me out for my um, ability to be a vessel to hold things, very earthenware pot core. And that's fine. That's all they really need me for. But I can never have them intimate because they will only take from me. And so I have to put boundaries like keeping our friendship very kind of neutral and acquaintancy, if that makes sense, or keeping them only as a client. And if they aren't clients, then I just have to like I tend to like respond. I have an Aries Mercury. I tend to respond to text right away. I have to force myself to leave it a couple of days because I'm like, you're just taking too much. And I'm not a caregiver. I'm not a parent to you. So I encourage you this season as an earth hefty person who probably has some well meaning but unfortunate leeches to maintain those distances and those boundaries for them. Then we have a Queen of Wands. I love that Venus is going into Aries. We're going to get some more spicy stuff. Mars is in Aries, not Aries, in Leo now. So we're moving forward. There's a lovely feeling of progression, and listen to those internal thoughts and desires. And I would encourage you to, this spring, lightheartedly do something that you just want to do. No purpose, no gain, no getting something out of it or having to monetize it. Just going and doing something because it like lights you up. Go to a concert, do a craft, in very Taurusy, get a massage, do something that just makes you feel like you're cared for and love. And maybe it's not a task, maybe it's just the space to be creative. Tap into that. And then we got to have the last two, which is interesting because a lot of the other readings, all of the kind of release was at the beginning, but it feels like for you at Taurus season, that full moon in Scorpio is really going to be hitting. We have the Eight of Cups, and it kind of feels very appropriate. The Seven of Swords. It feels as though we're not quite done with the Venus retrograde story, even once it gets out of the shadow period. And at the very end of Taurus season, you're going to have to let some stuff go because you didn't have all the information you need. And I'll say this from my personal experience, not everyone experiences retrogrades the same. Some people get pre-retrograde, revelations. Some people are mid-retrograde revelations. I tend to be a couple weeks after, so a couple weeks to months after the retrograde. I'll be like, oh, that's what we were doing. Glad that I know that now, and this is what's informing my decision. So don't be shocked if you have like a retrograde callback with that Scorpio full moon of things that aren't quite done. And I encourage you to release those things and to recognize that the information that you didn't know, there was no way you could have gotten that sooner. Don't hold yourself accountable to having, more responsibility than you need in whatever happens with this kind of final moment of fallout. All right, my loves, that is my reading for you. Connect to nature, connect to yourself, allow yourself to, don't just fill up the space of Taurus season with more tasks. Allow yourself to breathe and expand and really enjoy what is a beautiful, lovely spring in spite of the world around us. All right, I'll see you in a different time and space. Pop any comments you have below, ask me any questions you have. Please like and subscribe, and blessed Taurus season.